This is CBC Here and Now.
Honourable members, you assemble here today during a perilous time in our history.
Some sobering words about the province's economic and health crises.
As politicians continue to deal with the fallout of a chaotic election.
It hasn't exactly felt like spring for parts of eastern Newfoundland, but that is all going to change as we head into the next week.
A St. John's-based group has recently purchased a school bus.
What a great way to get around this big island of ours and reach people who are isolated.
The plan is to retrofit it and tour the island, bringing programs to seniors. I'm Jeremy Eaton. I'll have that story coming up on Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. The 50th session of the provincial legislature got underway today with the traditional reading of the throne speech. Lieutenant Governor Judy Foote delivered a roadmap of the new Liberal government's agenda. The speech highlighted that plan will be heavily guided by the recommendations from Moya Green.
Using this foundational report and broad consultations, my government will, together with the people of the province.
But that speech was overshadowed by the chaotic and controversial provincial election, one that is now being contested in court by 3 candidates. The first piece of legislation introduced in the House today, a bill to amend the Elections Act. But as Terry Roberts reports, there's disagreement about how to move beyond an election that took a record 10 weeks to conclude.
Just moments after the Queen's representative left the legislature, House Leader Steve Crocker had this to say.
I ask leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Elections Act 1991, Bill Number 1.
Less than 3 weeks after the Liberals won 22 of 40 districts. Questions and condemnation continue to surround the election, tossed into turmoil by the pandemic. With widespread frustration over how mail-in voting was handled, the Premier says changes are coming to the Elections Act.
I think it's highlighted in the election that it needs to be modernized.
A review will be led by the Justice Minister, but the NDP wants the All-Party Democratic Reform Committee reconstituted.
I am confident this committee is more than capable of bringing forth recommendations not only for democratic reform, but also modernizing the Elections Act.
The PCs also support an all-party approach.
It's a good first step, I'm hoping, and we're going to push for it.
But the Premier would not commit to that.
I've tasked the Minister of Justice with this, and I'm sure he'll look at all tools available to him, including working with the opposition.
This independent MHA wants even more action. He plans to bring forth a motion calling for an independent investigation.
Given all that's gone on in the recent provincial election, I believe the onus is on us to investigate all the allegations that are out there, to gather all the facts, and to give the Chief Electoral Officer the opportunity to respond to all the questions that I know people have about what decisions were made, how they were made, why they were made, and to be held accountable to the House of Assembly.
It's something the NDP supports. It's challenging the election in court.
We're not getting the will to take action on what we all realize, or we all believe, that is a very problematic election. The Premier has not taken any ownership of that. He has not given strong direction. He just says we need to change the act.
2 defeated PC candidates are also taking legal action. Paul Lane says the Premier needs to accept responsibility for the timing of the election, but says Elections NL CEO Bruce Chalk should also be investigated.
Were there breaches of the Elections Act? And if there were, then the Chief Electoral Officer has a lot of explaining to do to the House.
Meanwhile, the Elections Act is expected to be updated to anticipate a wide range of potential crises and ensure citizens have a full and fair opportunity to exercise their democratic rights. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
As you heard Terry mention there is a third appeal over the election results. This one is aimed directly at Bruce Chalk. It comes from Sheila Fitzgerald, the PC candidate in St. Barb, Lanza Meadows, who lost to Liberal Crystalline Howell by more than 200 votes. Fitzgerald alleges Chalk failed to carry out his duties. She cites the confusion around the cancellation of in-person voting, the short-lived drive-through voting option. Fitzgerald alleges the Charter of Rights and Freedoms was violated, as well as the Elections Act. She also wants the election results for her district to be declared void. She's the third candidate to contest the election. Former PCMHA Jim Lester, NDP leader Alison Coffin have both filed similar court challenges.
Well, another day with the temperature difference across the province wide, certainly from the west coast to the east coast of the island, and then even up through Labrador. Sitting under a ridge of high pressure right now, but we've got an area of low pressure just to the south. Brought in some cloud cover earlier today for, or at least some high cloud cover for eastern areas of the island. Southwest, another beautiful day today with those temperatures around 12 degrees for Stephenville and 6 degrees for the Rec House area. So a little cooler than we have been seeing for the past little bit. And then we've got those temperatures up across Labrador sitting around 5 degrees for Lab City, and same thing along the strait. Now, winds are pretty gusty and have been. We're seeing those gusts anywhere from 40 to 50 kilometers per hour right now. Those are going to increase as we head through the evening tonight and then through the day tomorrow, but I'll get into those details coming up.
Thank you very much, Ashley. A COVID-19 update for you now. The source of an outbreak on the West Coast that had caused widespread testing earlier this week, well, it's been identified. It's been traced back to travel within Canada. Western Health opened up testing on Monday to try and determine if there was community spread in the region. And while that source is known, the case that is still not known in the eastern region is still being investigated. There are also 2 new cases of COVID in the province to tell you about. One case within the eastern region, a man in his 60s who traveled internationally. The other is in the Western Health region, a man in his 20s or 30s who traveled within Canada. Also today, there is now 1 person in hospital due to COVID and 1 new recovery, which means there are 15 active cases. Public Health has also issued an advisory about Air Canada Flight 8008 that arrived in Deer Lake from Toronto on Sunday. Anyone who was on that plane should arrange for a COVID test. And rotational workers are being advised about an outbreak at the Royal Camp Services worksite in Grand Prairie, Alberta. Anyone who is home after working there in the last 14 days must self-isolate for the full time.
Well, Newfoundland and Labrador's top court says the Department of National Defence is not liable in a sexual abuse case that dates back 50 years. John Doe was a teenager from Newfoundland who was abused by a training officer in 1970 at CFB Greenwood in Nova Scotia. In 2011, John Doe sued the military over what happened. A Supreme Court judge found that D&D was not to blame, ruling the abuse was not related to any enhanced opportunity or power relationship given to the abuser by the military. John Doe appealed, but in a unanimous decision this week, the Court of Appeal dismissed his case.
Construction work is underway on Corner Brook's first ever roundabout. The city hopes it will reduce the number of accidents and improve traffic flow in a busy area. But not everyone's on board with the idea. Here now's Colleen Connors takes us to the other construction site.
So this is where the roundabout is going to go in Corner Brook. It's a busy intersection with a lot of residents that way and malls and stores this way, plus a very busy gas station parking lot. Now, a lot of people in Corner Brook don't understand why a roundabout is needed in a town of less than 20,000 people. Darren Charters with the City of Corner Brook loves roundabouts, and he explains why it is such a good decision to put one right here.
Roundabouts are great. A lot of people have misconceptions about roundabouts. Roundabouts are extremely safe. That's the number one thing about roundabouts. The number two thing is they're very efficient. You don't have to wait for traffic lights to cycle through. When you get there and there's a gap in traffic, you can proceed through. So they're a lot more efficient from a traffic operations perspective.
At Confederation Drive and West Valley Road, crews are filling in land, making way for the roundabout. The current traffic lights are outdated and don't meet national safety standards. They needed to be replaced. Charters says the city applied for federal funding a couple of years ago, and the roundabout plan was approved.
They're the best, safest, newest technology for traffic control.
During this public information session earlier this week, some residents asked questions about whether the roundabout was necessary. Others took to social media questioning the safety and cost of the project, saying things like this plan will create problems. This is such an utter disgraceful use of money, and this project should be canceled.
I've done this before, and I really do understand the initial reaction to the thought of a roundabout. But in most cases I've seen, once people see it installed, they get why it's so safe, they see how efficient it is, it's very attractive, and people tend to like them after the fact. But I really do understand the resistance at first.
Now, he says there are 15 in the province now, with more in the works for even smaller towns. The roundabout here will have a single lane that can accommodate big tractor trailers and camper vans. Today, city crews are busy preparing the area for the big build.
Construction started early because of the mild weather we've been having. And Charter says that the roundabout should be complete in about 10 weeks, which would take us up to the end of June. That's when residents can start to use the roundabout. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, a slightly different kind of transportation story. A nonprofit group in St. John's hopes to bridge the gap between young people and seniors, starting with a school bus. The Old School Intergenerational Project aims to turn its new bus into a traveling arts space. Here now's Jeremy Eaton has that story.
It is our mission to connect generations through the arts.
Erin Windsor lays out the dream she and project co-founder Claire Rouleau have. Take this 2008 yellow school bus and turn it into a workspace on wheels.
The vision for the bus is to be an accessible space for all people, seniors, children, and everybody in between. We want them to connect through arts activities and really start to understand each other better.
On Wednesday, the pair showed off the bus they intend to buy, thanks to a $24,000 grant from a federal government program designed to help seniors. They learned about it after calling their local MP for a little help.
The intergenerational aspect of it is pretty important. We're in a situation now, of course, been through the pandemic, amplifies all of the issues that we have, but social isolation for seniors is a big issue.
The bus is the first step, getting it road ready the second.
Serve as a mobile programming space to accommodate live performances, arts workshops, and skill sharing, and so much more for seniors and their communities province-wide.
Rouleau says one thing they want to do is bring theatre to seniors in parts of the province who normally wouldn't get to see a show.
It's going to be designed specifically for those with dementia or who struggle with language because of some form of memory loss. So it's going to be kind of accessible in a way that most other theatre performances are. It's not going to be focused on narrative or plot. It's going to be very exploratory and sensory.
Despite the funding, the group still needs help, asking if any corporations want to chip in and help cover the costs, or if anyone wants to offer up electrical services for the retrofit. They are also looking for seniors to offer their insights. Old School already has a younger voice in Sam Hannaford, a 13-year-old who took part in a previous Pen Pal project.
I just really liked talking to seniors and helping them and stuff, and like telling them about myself and them telling me about themselves. I found that really cool.
While the former Sheraton Musical Theatre grads already have lots to think about, COVID-19 is still near the forefront of their minds.
We have, of course, had to think about how we're going to account for having people inside if there are still social distancing measures. It's bigger than it looks. So even with maintaining that 6 feet distance, we'll still be able to accommodate small groups.
Today is a big step forward for the organization, and the duo behind the project say just getting the bus alone is a big win. Now the next step, getting it on the road so those wheels on that bus can go round and round the province. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, most people in Newfoundland and Labrador will know Ray Johnson as one of the members of Buddy Wuss's Name and the other fellers. So it might come as a surprise to learn that he's also a bit of a Titanic expert. The CBC's Mark Cumby has that story.
Route 66 Diner in Carbonear. Not the first place that comes to mind when you think about the Titanic.
We are a 50s style diner, so as you can tell by all the black drapes around, Elvis Presley has left the building this evening, so we've had to reinvent the building, reinvent downstairs to make it into the Titanic dining room.
And why transform the space? Well, that's to show off Ray Johnson's model of the Titanic.
I've been working on the model since 2009, so 12 years. Went by so quickly, especially too when you enjoy something like model making. When I started the model, I said, is there anyone going to be actually going to see her? And it dawned on me that maybe I could do a presentation or two. It's what we call the timeline of the Titanic. We're going to start with her design going back to 29th of July 1908, right up to the time she hits the iceberg and sinks.
Fleet takes the rope and rings the bell 3 times down through the bridge. And immediately a voice says, "What did you see?"
Iceberg, right ahead!
While Ray was patiently building and planning 2 sold-out shows, he was also writing his new book.
I was composing it all in my head, compiling it. Then I said to myself, it's time to sit at my computer and put it in paper form or book form. And it's doing really well.
It's a heartwarming story, it's a sad story, it's a very emotional story. So I'm glad that Ray has brought it to life here in my building.
Mark Cumby, CBC News in Carbonear.
Now, today actually marks the 106th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. Ray Johnson's model is on display at the Route 66 Diner in Carbonear, and his book, The Titanic, The Catastrophe That Should Not Have Happened, is available in local bookstores.
The ice was there, but it wasn't as thick as it should be. Testing equipment got would just drill through it like it was butter.
Smart sensors, solar panels, communities on Labrador's north coast are paving the way.
Combining traditional Inuit knowledge with new technology. Our series Thin Ice returns after Ashley's weather.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, before we get to the weather, we just have to show you this.
Yes, homegrown hockey star Alex Newhook scored his first professional goal last night.
Back for Newhook. Cuts in, fires, scores!
Newhook started Colorado's NHL team on a winning streak, first with an assist, then with this goal, both less than 6 minutes into the first period.
Yeah, this 20-year-old from St. John's went to the Avalanche in the first round of the 2019 NHL draft. He signed his 3-year entry-level contract late last month.
Yes, his team won 6-2 last night, and Newhook took home first star. Congratulations. It's great.
Yeah, a win for him, but I don't know if you'd consider this winning weather heading into the weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no. For those of us in the east, we woke up to a dusting of flurries this morning, unfortunately, and some cooler temperatures as well. Let's take a look at those temperatures across the board. Only reaching a high near 1 degree today in St. John's, to Bonavista, Twillingate, only hovering around the 0 degree mark. And then we've got those milder temperatures for the southwest yet again today. Stephenville actually took home that today at 12 degrees and cooler as well up through portions of Labrador. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, reaching a high near 1 degree this afternoon. We're still sitting there now, but we are seeing those temperatures drop across most of the island down to 0 in St. John's, and with those gusty winds out there, feeling more like -7. Same thing for Bonavista, Twillingate. You're feeling more like -5, and then we're feeling more like the minus double digits through Makovic at this hour. The winds as we head through the overnight tonight are going to pick up a little bit. We're going to see gusts anywhere from 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. Even in those exposed areas, we may see a little higher winds, somewhere between 70 and 80 kilometers per hour. And that will generally continue as we head through the afternoon tomorrow. We've got an area of low pressure to the south, and that brought some cloud cover through the day today. And if I zoom in a little bit, you can see some of the darker cloud cover here is that onshore flow, and then we've got that higher cloud cover that moved in earlier today. So we are continuing to see this pattern, at least for the next couple of days. Not a whole lot happening as far as the weather goes, but like I said, we did wake up to flurries this morning for parts of the east and north. And as we head through the night tonight, we're going to see a similar story. So that cloud cover will continue to creep a little bit further inland tonight as we see that onshore flow, as well as the potential for a few flurries. Up through Lab West, you're going to see some heavier snow, heavier flurries really, about 2 centimeters on the way for you. Might see a few flurries through central Labrador, and then we're looking at coastal areas partly to mostly cloudy as we head through the night tonight and into tomorrow morning. Again, we're going to see that cloud cover for the majority of the province as you wake up. Taking a look at the temperatures tonight, hovering a degree or 2 above 0 in the east, and for the Burin Peninsula, again, those winds will be pretty gusty. Northeasterlies 30 to 50 kilometers per hour, a little more in those exposed areas. And then staying partly cloudy on the west coast, so you're going to sit around -2 tonight in Corner Brook, Port aux Basques around -1. Double digits for coastal areas of Labrador under those clearing skies, like I said, and then flurries will continue for Lab City as well as Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Not a whole lot of wind tonight for you. Now, as we head through the day tomorrow, we're going to see that flurry activity continue generally. Same thing towards central Labrador. And then areas along the coast will actually see some sunshine through the afternoon. You'll see that the cloud cover will essentially do exactly what it did today as well. It'll creep back towards the coast for the island. The southwest will see another beautiful afternoon, albeit the temperatures will be a little bit cooler as we head through tomorrow afternoon. And we're going to still see that potential for a few flurries. We'll likely wake up to another dusting again. And then those northeasterly winds will continue through the afternoon. So that means the temperatures are going to stay cool. 1 to 2 degrees as you head towards central. A little warmer along the south coast, 5 degrees for Marystown, 7 in Port aux Basques. These temperatures a little bit cooler than what we have been seeing on the west coast. With those winds a little less as well. Northeasterlies about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Sunshine in the afternoon tomorrow for Happy Valley, Goose Bay at 0 degrees, and then Nain, you're going to sit around -5 as the daytime high tomorrow. So we've been seeing these cool temperatures, 1, 2 degrees in the east over the past couple of days. Take a look at the temperature trend. Going back up to those double digits as we head into the middle of next week. We should be sitting around 5 degrees this time of the year. I'll tell you what's going to happen for the rest of the province as far as these mild temperatures when I come back.
Well, as we've been seeing in our series Thin Ice, it's been an unusually warm winter on Labrador's north coast, where communities are feeling the effects of climate change. Reporter Meg Roberts has been bringing us this series, including how Inuit people are taking big leaps to adapt to the changing landscape, and she joins us now. So Meg, you've been following these changes on the north coast. What more can you tell us about what's being done about it?
While this year has been much warmer than previous years, climate change is not a new conversation. Warmer winters, less ice, fog, flooding, those are all things that people on the North Coast have been seeing over the years. And so now they're making plans to adapt. So let me tell you about Smart Ice. Trevor Bell, a professor at Memorial University, created the technology to keep people safe on the ice. But the project's being carried out by Indigenous people across northern communities. Here's how it works. A hole is cut into the ice, and a sensor called the Smart Buoy is dropped into it. That sensor reads temperature and ice thickness, and the data is posted online where the public can view it. There's also another tool called a Smart Comatic, which is a sensor strapped to a wooden sled towed by a snowmobile. It uses electromagnetic fields to measure ice. Rex Howell is the Smart Ice production lead in Maine.
People can use that new technology, that smart community data, in conjunction with their traditional Inuit knowledge as another tool to help keep them safe, if they are traveling on the seas.
It's being used in Nunavut, and there's plans to expand in Rigolet, Postville, and Makkovik.
And Meg, there are other projects cropping up along the coast as well, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of action on the renewable energy front. So, for example, a proposed microgrid wind project is in the works for Nain. The hope to start construction as soon as this summer. Once up and running, wind energy would replace about 1 million liters of diesel a year in Nain. And that's a lot, considering the Natsivik communities consume about 7 million liters a year.
What we hope to do is to really test this technology out in a harsh northern climate, to prove that it can be done reliably, to prove that it can be done cost effectively, and then really serve as a model for development in the other 4 diesel-dependent Labrador Inuit communities.
And in Makkovik, they've installed solar panels on the roof of the arena. Last year, those panels saved the community $13,000.
The more we can do, the better now for renewable energy. The solar panels, wind energy, and that kind of thing is the way to go. If we want to slow down the effects that we're feeling now from climate change and the weather patterns changing so quickly.
Well, Meg, it sounds like these renewable energy products are also lowering the carbon footprint in these communities.
Yes, and while it is a small benefit, stakeholders say lowering the Natsivit's carbon footprint is something that the federal government is going to have to take charge of, and that's because they're just not able to do that alone.
Emissions reductions isn't our primary goal. We want to generate revenue, which we can then invest in our own self-determined priorities. A single large-scale renewable energy project can generate hundreds of thousands of revenue a year that can then be invested in language and cultural programming, that can be invested in improved housing stocks.
And these communities are paving the way for other places across Canada. Labrador is a leader on the climate change front, and that's because they're seeing these changes at such an alarming rate. They know that other communities are looking to them for solutions, and they're excited to share what they've learned. Carolyn.
Thanks so much, Meg. That's our Meg Roberts reporting, and our series Thin Ice isn't over. Next, we'll be asking government about the role it plays in all of this, seeking answers to questions people on the north coast of Labrador have been posing for years.
The answer to this one is that we don't have enough people vaccinated.
After the break, we get answers to your questions about vaccinations. The vaccine situation seems to change almost daily as we get new information. There are concerns about blood clots related to the AstraZeneca vaccine, and this week the U.S. announced a pause on Johnson & Johnson for similar concerns. Well, we know you have a lot of questions about vaccines, so we wanted to bring in Dr. Lisa Barrett. She's from Old Perlican, but is now a doctor and professor in Halifax, and she's an expert on infectious diseases. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So a lot of people have questions about AstraZeneca. Right now, it's only being used for people 55 to 64. So Andrew Taylor wants to know, I've been wondering why the AstraZeneca vaccine has been relegated to just a certain age group that it is now and not entirely paused until further testing is done. What makes it safe for that age group?
Great question. So the information that came out from the European areas that have been using a lot of AstraZeneca in the early parts of their vaccine rollout found very rare, and I mean very rare, maybe 1 in a million, 1 in 250,000 people who received the vaccine, and they happen to be, for the vast majority, women under the age of 55, in fact, between 18 and say 46 or 48, that there was a risk of a very rare kind of immune-related kind of blood clot that could happen. And because of that risk, albeit very, very low, there was a further investigation that did lead to the European group saying this may be related to the vaccine, however, still very safe. The reason that people above the age of 55 or 55 are still eligible to get it, and in particular in Canada, is because of two things. Number one, the risk is very low and the incidents were found almost exclusively in people under the age of 65. That may be different now that there seems to be a case of an older person in Canada. But number two, and very importantly, your risk of getting COVID and having a very bad outcome like hospitalization or death are far higher if you're above 55 than they are of getting a blood clot and having a similarly bad impact. And so because of those reasons, it was decided that the benefit of the vaccine far exceeded, at least to our knowledge at the moment, the risks, and therefore it was still approved for people greater than 55. Not that we don't like people greater than 55 and want something bad to happen to them. This was very much based on information, data, and risk benefit.
As you were talking about earlier, there are lots of other reasons that people develop blood clots and lots of other risk factors. And so one of the questions that I've heard a lot of leads right into what Josephine Billard wants to know. She says, during my chemotherapy treatments, I developed a blood clot in my arm, no doubt in part because of the harsh chemo drug. So my question is, should I avoid getting the AstraZeneca vaccine since I've already had a blood clot in the last year? I've heard that from other people who've said, you know, I've got a genetic predisposition to a blood clot or other risks. So does that change the risk equation for people?
That is an answer that is somewhat evolving at the moment. For the most part, those, as I call them, the usual type clots, and we call them provoked blood clots, meaning you had something going on with your immune system or cancer or some other medical condition that made you more likely to have a blood clot. In general, that's a very different mechanism than this specific mechanism associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And it is unlikely that the two overlap. Okay,
the next question is looking across the country and seeing what's happening in lots of other provinces like Ontario. With more and more people being vaccinated Canada-wide, why are we seeing such a spike in cases? Shouldn't it be going the other way?
Yeah, of course, that's what we'd all like to see. And the same could be said maybe on an even bigger scale in the United States. Many of the, I was going to say provinces, they'd kill me. Many of the states there are actually still seeing increases in their case numbers despite having vaccinated a very good percentage of their population, meaning between 10-20%. And in fact, in other countries where they're up around 50% now of their population vaccinated, cases have gone down very, very much. So basically, the answer to this one is that we don't have enough people vaccinated yet to prevent that chain of transmission, especially without symptoms, from one person to another. in densely populated areas in particular in order for it to make a difference.
What does Newfoundland and Labrador society look like as we near 100% of the population getting our first shot? Do we dare think normal times, or will it take that second round to get us there?
Well, Paul gets a gold star for saying 100% of the population is vaccinated, because most people are, kind of wishy-washy, and they say, oh, we'd like 70% or 80%. So he's at the top of my immune system gold star list today. That's amazing. We do want as many people as we can vaccinated. Does that mean we get back to immediately normal? Well, let's all be honest a little bit. Atlantic Canada has had a lot more privileges than many other parts of the world, and Canada, in fact. So how much more would that change very quickly? Good question. We do need to be careful, I think, as we open things up. And I would love to see that happen in stages. So, every couple of months, we see a little bit more restriction go away, again, after everyone is fully vaccinated. But it is going to take some time. And I do think if I were a betting person, it's going to take the better part of a year. And let's hope we keep all those variants under control, and that doesn't set our timeline back.
Well, one thing I've learned covering COVID is you never want to predict too far into the future, because you never know exactly what's going to happen. But Dr. Barrett, I really appreciate you joining us and sharing some of your insights and expertise today.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Well, now we're going to take you back to Winnipeg, where the new Inuit Arts Centre is holding its first exhibition. It features several remarkable pieces by Inuit artists from Labrador.
Yes, last night we showed you work by Bronson Jock, a young artist from Postville. Well, tonight we're going to see pieces by 4 more artists from Nunatsiavut and hear the stories behind their works of art.
What's really fun about this show is that there are so many new media works. So there's still the traditional carving and printmaking, but there's also collage, there's video work, sound pieces, lots of fashion and jewelry. Seeing that diversity of Inuit voices, it just does my heart so much good.
The piece that they picked for the show of mine is a teapot that I made back in 1997. It's called Subtlety. They're not traditional by no stretch. I'm using designs. Sometimes they're based on ulus, but each one I'm always telling like some sort of story. Sometimes they're etched, could be with syllabics on the side, or could be images of fish or seals, or other times they're left to a high polish. But I think it's the shape and the idea is what makes them a little different.
I'm a multidisciplinary artist, so I have 2 wall hangings. One is done in a more traditional work, basically hand-sewn smoked hand caribou skin with beadwork on it. The second one is a more contemporary piece, more electronically based to address issues of today. So I've taken apart an electronic keyboard, took that completely apart, and I cut it out into the shape of a big trout. The work that I do, I try to evoke memories within the viewer as well. So when they look at my piece, your mind clicks into other places that you probably forgot you remembered.
The 2 pieces that are going to be exhibited there are 3D models that I generated through my drone photography. 3D modeling using your drone is great because you know, one of the great uses and purposes of it is you get to digitally preserve whatever location, you know, you're modeling. You know, with climate change and stuff like that up in the north, it's a great way to digitally preserve important locations.
This is sound that I recorded in Newfoundland and Labrador, just of crashing ocean waves, the little kind of gentle drum beat on top. And it's part of an installation that I did for Inua. This is basically a sea can, which is a large shipping container into which I've installed a number of murals flanking the sides. And on the far wall, there's a video projection with sound. And it's very much about different kinds of interpretation of Labrador and the coastline and some of the mythology, some of the Inuit mythology area. I'm deeply humbled and so excited for Inua. I feel like this is the beginning of something really big, and hopefully this will be the first step into seeing more contemporary work by artists and more engagement of Inuit in contemporary art.
Canada's telecom regulator is opening the door a crack to more wireless competition, and it's doing so by allowing a small number of regional companies to launch national wireless services which piggyback on the networks of the established players. Canada has some of the most expensive wireless rates in the world. The Big Three complain that the smaller operators do not help build the expensive infrastructure needed to ensure service. Well, in federal politics, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole has announced a $5 billion plan to tackle climate change. And like the Liberal plan, it includes a price on carbon, something the Conservatives have long campaigned against.
$0
go to government. This is not a tax at all. I have said it is a pricing mechanism for consumers. It will be 1/3 the pricing of Mr. Trudeau's ever-rising carbon tax, but nothing goes to government. It is not a tax.
Now, the plan calls for a $20 per ton carbon price for consumers every time they buy hydrocarbon-based fuels, such as gasoline. That money would be placed into a special savings account for Canadians to draw on to make environmentally friendly purchases. O'Toole promised to collaborate with the provinces to create the plan. He says his plan would meet Canada's commitments under the Paris Climate Accord.
Well, new details are out about Saturday's funeral for Prince Philip. They include the fact that none of the royal family will be wearing military uniforms and will wear civilian clothes instead, and the 30 people who will be in attendance were announced. That number is limited because of pandemic restrictions. Meanwhile, new photos are out today of some members of the royal family remembering Prince Philip. These pictures of Prince Charles and his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, were shared on Twitter. They were looking at the flowers and tributes left by the public at Marlborough House Gardens in London and near Windsor Castle. A ceremonial unit of the British Army could be seen taking part in a rehearsal for the funeral. Although scaled down during the pandemic, many traditional elements will remain, including a military procession. Welcome back to Here and Now. You could call this a COVID side hustle success story. A side project has grown into a flourishing small business, with some of the proceeds even going towards supporting youth programming.
Yes, it revolves around basketballs and the Toronto Raptors. Greg Ross has that story.
When Olivia Ho saw basketball planters on the internet last fall, she just had to try making one for herself.
It started as a pandemic project.
She thought it would be a great way to stay busy with the city just starting to lock down again. So she got to work in between shifts at St. Michael's Hospital, where she works as a cardiac sonographer. When she finished her first planter, she was so proud she wanted to show it off.
And I kind of posted it on my own Instagram, and all of a sudden I got a lot of messages flooding into my my inbox being like, make me one, I want one, I want one.
She decided to start a side business called The Give and Grow, selling them to friends and family online. But it was one friend in particular who had the right connections.
A friend of mine actually bought a planter from me and gifted it to a friend of hers that just got this new job. This new job happened to be with the Raptors.
He loved his planters so much, he thought they would make perfect housewarming gifts for the entire team, who at the time were just settling into their new homes in Tampa.
The Raptors sent Olivia 20 basketballs just like this one and asked her to customize a planter for all of the players and coaches.
I got a local calligrapher named Mark Serrano to draw on the balls, each of their names, so Lowry, Van Vliet.
The Raptors tweeted a video with Ho's story and the caption, "Olivia didn't drop the ball." Since that tweet went out, she's had about 100 new orders on her website, which she says will take weeks to get caught up on.
Next 2-3 weeks, I'll be painting basketballs, I'll be cutting them up.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
What a clever idea.
Such a cool idea. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Well, looking at the long range, heading into the weekend, I was saying last night that I'm really hoping to get out and do some gardening, spend some time in the backyard. How is it going to be looking on the weekend?
Maybe next week.
Oh.
I mean, we'll still see some nice temperatures, but it is looking like we're going to get a little bit unsettled, certainly as we head towards the end of the weekend. Let's take a look at the future tracker. Saturday, not too bad. Ridge of high pressure will be in place, which will keep things quiet, but we're still in that onshore flow, so we'll still see some cloud cover and the potential for some flurries through the afternoon on Saturday. And then we watch our next low pressure system move in. This one will bring some rain for most of us as we head into the afternoon on Sunday. So this is into the morning hours, and then as we progress through the day, we're going to see that risk of some rain, and then even in the higher elevations we may see some snow as some of that cooler air will be the story up through Labrador. Not a whole lot happening for you. You will see that system affect you as you head into Monday. So as far as temperatures go on Saturday, lovely up across Labrador, 4 to 6 degrees, a little cooler to the north, but you will see sunshine. And then as far as the island goes, again, those cooler temperatures, so 3 degrees for St. John's. The risk of some flurries will continue, but also some sunshine, a few peaks of sun certainly possible as you head towards central, a little bit more cloud cover, 4 or 5 degrees, and then staying mild again on the west coast, so 10 degrees for Corner Brook. And then a little cooler for Port aux Basques and the risk of some flurries or showers. Flurries through the day for the morning hours, and then showers as we head into the evening as that next system rolls in. So for Sunday, we're looking at a similar forecast as far as temperatures go across Labrador, but also that potential for a few flurries in the west, and then that's when we get unsettled for Sunday. So this is when the most precipitation will fall, and again, in those higher elevations, we'll more than likely see some flurry activity, certainly through central as well. Temperatures will be anywhere from 4 to 6 degrees. Looking ahead, there's those double digits I've been talking about, which we've all been waiting for a little while. By Monday, we should sit around 6 degrees. We'll see the showers in the morning, and then eventually some clearing, and then into Tuesday, sunshine and 10 degrees. And then for central Newfoundland, we're looking at a similar warm-up as we head into Tuesday, but about 5 to 7 degrees until we get there through Monday, again with that rain continuing through the day. Same thing for western Newfoundland as far as the higher elevations potentially seeing some flurries, and then that will change over to rain as that temperature climbs up. 11 degrees by the time Tuesday rolls around. As far as eastern Labrador goes, we'll see unsettled conditions as we head into the beginning of the week after that ridge of high pressure moves off. off, and then maybe a return to some sunshine on Tuesday. Your temperatures 5 to 6 degrees. And then similar temperatures across western Labrador, so back up above zero with unsettled conditions expected for Tuesday. Wanted to share this photo. This is Flat Bay Brook near St. George's. Brian shared that one with us. If you have any weather photos, send to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I don't know what that mysterious orange thing is, but I hope it makes a return visit.
Yeah, we miss it.
It's coming, don't worry.
And that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for all of you who sent in questions.
Yes.
Didn't get a chance to ask all of them to Lisa Barrett, but hopefully we'll have her back on the show. And also a reminder that Eastern Health today, they announced that anyone 65 years or older can now book a vaccine. So you can go onto their website if you want to get vaccinated.
Great. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.